Hi Flosstube, it's Lynn, the Canadian Stitcher. I'm going to do a weekly update, but I just have a little bit to say. First of all, thank you to all of my subscribers for your views, for your likes, your comments have been so encouraging and so kind. I just really appreciate that because I am new to this and learning as I go. I'm going to be doing a giveaway once I have 100 subscribers. So if that happens during the week, I might just pop up a quick video just to explain how the contest is going to go, where the giveaway is going to go. If not, it'll be probably next weekend on my weekly update. So thanks again for all of your kind comments. It really means a lot to me. Thank you. So I thought what would be fun, because I'm getting comments and subscribers from all over the world, I actually ordered a world map, which I'm going to hang on the stitching wall over here where it's blank. I thought that would be really fun, kind of almost like a little game to play, and just put a pin for the different countries or states or provinces, towns, cities that people are from. So I got these little flags off of Amazon, and when my map comes in, I'll be hanging that up and I'll share that with you at some time. So I thought that would be kind of fun. So for weekly progress, I did start the Long Dog Sampler Foursome Reel number 4. I did take that one to work, and I'm doing it with a burgundy DMC floss. I won't bring that one home with me again to work on until I've got it almost finished, or possibly have a break from work or something that I could work on it at home. So I did work on the Fall Fairy. I showed you where I was starting off in my last video. So this is how much progress I've made. So I've stitched this part, park thread. I stitched the this part of the tree and these mushrooms in here, and I'm just coming up into this little spot that's the grassy part there. This is from a kit. It's the Gold Collection from Dimensions, and it actually contained the fabric with it. It's designed by Ruth Sanderson, using cross stitches, half cross stitches, and the fabric is 14 by 12 inch, and I believe it is an 18 count. So one of my tips, this is going to be my video that I'm showing you some tips on. So I do have these magnetic rulers that have stitch guides on them. I don't know if you can see that. 14 count, 18 count. So with this, if you're not sure what the count of your fabric is, you can just lay it down and line up the marks to the fabric. This one is actually a 16 count. So that's how far I've gotten. I'll work on her a little bit more today. I'm probably going to work from the bottom and then up, and so I can start working. I'll do this half of her first. I'm really excited to get going more on the girl part. There is a lot of back stitching in this design, but I do all my back stitching at the end, so that's when all this is really going to come to life with all the different back stitching around the mushrooms and the log and that. So that was my progress for the week on that one. Next week I'm going to be working on the links, which is this one here. So like I said, this was a pick to pat. So pick to pat, www.pic with the number 2 pat.com. If you have a picture of your dog or cat or child or grandchild and you'd want to stitch it up, really any picture that you want to do, you can just scan the picture into your computer and then email it to them, and they create the pattern for you. This one I told you when I was working on my Haid that I spread the whole thing out on the floor before I start, and then I make myself a map of how it's supposed to go. For this one, I laid it out the same way that I did with my Haid, and I had it actually upside down. So if you're going to do a pick to pat, just make sure you know that page 1 is starting at the bottom left, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, this one ended up with 6, and then 7 up there. So once I had spread the whole thing out on the floor, I was able to see that something was wrong. The way I had set it up, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across the top, and then coming down there was enough detail that I could see that something was wrong. So I went back and I figured it out, and it actually starts with number 1 down at the bottom. So the fabric I'm using for this one is an 18 count pearl gray Ada. So this is the background here. I was really worried when I started on this that this is going to look like a camo print, like a camouflage print. Once I worked more of it though, it actually does look really good. It's kind of subtle there. And this is just the start of the cat here with some of the grays. So that'll be one of my projects for this week. I'm also going to have a new start on Saturday. That's going to be December 1st. Sorry, I need to bring it, I decided I'm going to bring a table up here to put everything on so that everything's handy for me. And now I've misplaced. The new start is going to be the Siren and the Shipwreck Angel. I'm so sorry, I can't seem to find it here. I'll show her next weekend once I get started on her. So I do have it all kitted up. I can't find it here. I have too much stuff around me. Sorry. So that'll be my new start for December 1st, the Mirabilia. So I wanted to make this video also to show you some of the tips and tricks that I use for cross stitching. So this isn't I'm not saying that this is the right way to do it, that your way is wrong. This is just how I do some of my stitching, and I'm still learning all the time, and I add new things, I try new things, I see if they work for me. If they don't, I let them go. If they do, I keep them. So there might be some information here. You might listen to this entire thing and learn absolutely nothing. You know all this already, and if that's the case, good. And if not, hopefully you can learn some good tips on some cross stitching, just more for organization and keeping the patterns all separate, and working on the pattern in an organized manner. So like I said, this isn't the right way to do anything. There is no right way and wrong way. It's whatever works for you, and these are some of the things that work for me. So I use both kits that usually come with the fabric, and I also do some from patterns where I select my own fabric. Either way, however you do them, you do need to prep the edges of the fabrics so to prevent fraying. So I don't sew, and I don't have a serger, or I don't know anybody who does. So I just prep the edges of my fabric with a product called Fray Check. So this is, I would just buy this at Michael's, but they have these at sewing stores also. So what I do is when I'm getting ready, I have my fabric laid out on a towel, and it's a towel that I only use for this purpose, and I just take a thin bead of the Fray Check and I run it along all the 4 edges, and then I just hang it up to dry, and then when I'm ready to start stitching, this just prevents the edges from fraying. Whether you're using linen or Ada or whatever, you have to have something to keep the edges from fraying. So that's one of the things that I do. The exception to that is if I was doing something that was really, really small, like this little Santa or this little mistletoe, like those little kind of things there, I would just cut a small piece of fabric, and I wouldn't bother to necessarily Fray Check around the edges, because it's only going to take you, I mean, you can get one of these done probably within an hour or two, so there's not going to be a whole lot of fraying going on. And then you usually end up framing these into like little, or prepping them in some way, or putting them in a little frame for an ornament, so then the edges would be glued down anyway. Let me grab a sip of water. So I sort, when I'm doing a kit, I sort out all my floss and I put them on bobbins. I prefer bobbins. So there is these cardboard ones that you can get. I think these are DMC. These ones are easy because you can write on them with pen or with pencil. If it's like the Fall Fairy that came with all the flosses to them, I prefer to have them on the bobbins, and then I just label the bobbins with what color number they are. These ones aren't DMC colors in the dimension gold, but they do have numbers like 18403. So I would just write that onto the cardboard bobbin. If I'm using the DMC floss and buying it on my own, I prefer to use the plastic bobbins instead. And then I do have the actual DMC color labels. with the different numbers on them. So then it's easier. You can write on these with a Sharpie or something like that, but I prefer to just put the little sticker on there with the color. So I also use floss boxes to organize my bobbins once I have them. And what I do, this is what I prefer to do, is for each different color of thread, I have a different slot in the bobbin box. The reason I do that is I don't want to have to, when I'm finished with a color, I don't want to have to go back in and rewind this onto a bobbin to have them all in the same one box. I just think that's a waste of time to sit and unwind this, rewind it before starting with the next color and putting it back in your floss box the way it is. So I prefer to have one separate slot for each color, and then I just, when I'm finished with that color, I'm starting a new one, I just put that whole little leftover piece of floss back in that one particular square, and it keeps it all organized without having to rewind them all the time. I know that's more expensive to have lots of different floss boxes for each project, but that's just how I prefer to do it. So, and I used to have a jewelry business, so I do have a lot of these boxes that are being used now for the cross stitch. So I place everything then that I'm working on for that particular project in a bin. So everything, each different project that I have has its own bin, and a lot of them have their own magnetic boards also. I just find it easier that way. I can just put the magnetic board back into the bin with the pattern on it wherever I left off my stitching. I bought them at the Dollar Tree. I think we have Dollar Tree here. They were just like $2 or something like that, so very inexpensive. I have all the bins kind of lined up on my floor here. Once I bring my table up here, they'll be more organized on the table, but I just have a separate bin for each. And then what I do is, this is kind of my videoing room, so I'm videotaping in here, and then whatever I'm working on for that week, I'll just take the whole bin and take it downstairs with me to start working on it. Or if I want to in the evening, if I want to stitch upstairs in my bedroom, I can just bring the whole bin along. It's just really convenient for moving things or keeping things organized. So you have to decide for yourself what you want to use. If you want to use a hoop, I do have several of the hoops, but I don't leave my work on this when I'm done stitching. I will take the hoop off to avoid getting hoop marks on these. I did have one that was permanently marked from a hoop that I hadn't taken off. There's also the Q-snaps, and that is what I actually prefer to use, is the Q-snaps. I just find they're really easy if the fabric is big enough, and they're easy to tighten up. You just kind of spin it like that and it tightens up the fabric. I do use some old fabric to protect the work when I put before I put the pipe on the top of it on the Q-snap. I do have a piece of fabric on there. That's just an old baby blanket. And then I use the grind guard also, which is what's around this one here. So it just helps to tuck in. I just tuck in all of the extra little bit of protective fabric there, and any of the extra fabric for the spot that I'm not stitching on there. I can tuck all that in. Sometimes I take a little piece of Scotch tape and I end up having to tape it down there. So my preference is the Q-snap. I do have the two other sizes. I think that one is 11 by 11. This is 11 by 17. And this is the one I'm using for the Angel of Spring that I showed in an earlier video. I do also have scroll rods, which I'm just starting to learn how to use it. This is my first project that I've done with the scroll rods. So same thing, I did put a piece of fabric there, or J-cloth or whatever, too, before I put the PVC pipe on this one. And then with this one, because I'm still learning, I just find that I cannot get the fabric really tight on this one. I don't know if it's how I'm doing up the screws or just whether it's this type of brand of the rods. So I use these things called stitch clips. These were from the Nordic Needle. I had it here somewhere. They're like little suspender clips. So it's a Velcro closure. It's got a little clip on it. So you just clip it onto the fabric, and then you just pull the Velcro strap, and then that makes it tighter. It's not on there perfectly, but it gives me more tension on this. So I find my stitches are neater if I have a good firm tension on the fabric. So it did come in a set of 4. I actually went back to that needle workshop. I was going to buy a set so I could do them as a giveaway, and they don't have them anymore. So they were from the Nordic Needle. So I did look up online to see if I could find them. I can't find them anywhere. So if you know a place to get them, please leave it in the comment section below. These, I'm going to see if I can figure out how to make these just with the little Velcro straps, and I will let you know if I get that figured out. So there's also ground guards that you can get for the edges of scroll rods. More, I think, particular if you're working with it on a floor frame. I don't have a floor frame. I am looking for one, but it needs to be exactly what I want before I'm going to purchase one. I need it to be the right size and be sturdy enough and also a bit portable. So I'm on the hunt for that. So still looking. I do have notes here. Sorry, so I could be a little bit more organized. You can also stitch in hand. I don't prefer to do it that way. So what people do is they just roll up their fabric in their hand and they just work on it by hand. The only time I would do that, again, is if I was working on like a little Christmas ornament or something like that. That's not gonna, I mean, it's gonna be a very small hoop that you'd use, and then you'd have to cut all the fabric. So I'll go stitch the really tiny little ornaments in hand. So I photocopy all of my patterns, whether it's from a magazine or whether it's from a kit. I prefer to have a working copy and then keep my original copy in really good condition. I'm probably going to be giving some away in my giveaways. I do have quite a few that I'm thinking of that I've completed. I won't ever stitch another, for example, this angel. Once I finish her, I would never stitch her again. It's just been there, stitched that. So I do have some things that I will be wanting to give away. If it's just, I just want to make a copy of it, I just do it at home on my little copier. And if I need it enlarged, or I need, if it's a very large piece, like the mermaid pattern was quite large. So I actually took it to Staples and I had it, just had them put it through the big flat copier to make myself a working copy. Usually for the Hades though, I order the large format and then I also enlarge that. I probably could order regular format, and I do like the paper copies of them. I do have one, I think, on my computer, but I much prefer the paper copies and the highlighting that I showed you in an earlier video. So once I've got all that ready, I already showed you how I set up my magnetic boards in an earlier video. I have, I don't always use pink. If I, sorry, this one, I'm just marking it off just with yellow. This one does have a lot of back stitching in it, and it's got, some of the back stitch outlines are in green here, and I know if I went over them with the pink highlighter, that probably would have taken them, like covered it up so that I'm not able to see that. So I'm only using the yellow so I can go back and do all the back stitching in the correct colors. For other ones though, like my big projects, I do a page at a time. I mark off with yellow what stitches need to be completed, and then pink to do the ones that I have done. So I showed you before about the Thread Magic. There was a product called Thread Heaven. I did get some by mistake. A company I had ordered the Thread Magic from, and they sent me the Thread Heaven. There was also several other things wrong with that order. That was from a Canadian supplier. So when I contacted them, they said that I could just keep the Thread Heaven and they would go ahead and reply or send me the actual Thread Magic product. I haven't ordered from them since. It was a really disappointing experience ordering from them. So now I'm just buying from 123 Stitch. In the US, I've made multiple orders to them, and every order has been perfect. There's absolutely nothing wrong. They don't substitute products. They don't, you know, charge me for something and then not put it in the box. So 123 Stitch is my favorite supplier. So Thread Magic is actually a thread conditioner. What I do, I have several of them here because I want to show you. So when it comes new, it's in a round chunk like that. So what I do is I take it out And with a good pair of scissors, not my embroidery scissors, I cut it into 4 pieces. And I'll tell you why I do that. So I have an empty one that has the magnet on it to stick to my magnetic board. So what happens when you're working with the Thread Magic, it does pick up the ink from the threads as you run it through. I thought when I first saw it, how yucky these were getting, I thought, oh my goodness, my hands must be so dirty. It's not that, it's the actual ink coming off from the floss. So this is the one I had worked on, that long dog sampler with the blue, and I don't know if you can see that, but the Thread Magic itself has turned blue because of the dye. So I prefer to just cut it into 4 pieces, use it until it's no longer got its stickiness or it's not seeming to coat the threads very much, and then I just chuck that little bit in the garbage and start with another fresh little quarter piece. So this little container, they actually have grooves in them, with the idea and the instructions. How they show it is that you run the floss through the grooves, like run it through. But what I find is that you get a groove in there, and then in the actual Thread Magic itself, and then as you keep doing it, it's not really picking anything up because you formed a groove. So what I was doing is I kept having to pick this up and moosh it around. So then I thought, well, why not just hold it in my hand and coat my threads with it? So that's what I do, and that's why I cut it into 4, just because it's easier to manage a little piece of it, and when it gets yucky, then just chuck it in the garbage and start with a fresh little piece of it. So also on my magnetic board, we had talked about I have my tweezers stuck on here and I have my scissors stuck on here, and then we looked at one of those stitch guides. These are magnetic rulers that have the inches on them, and then the stitch guides. Sorry, I'll quit flashing that around and actually show you. To be able to, if you have fabric and you don't know what count it is, this is a really good little tool to use to help figure that out. So then I have my little needle bar here. So this is just a little group of magnets. This is how I organize my needles. I don't actually use a needle minder. When I first started watching Flosstube and saw the needle minders, I thought, well, that's such a great idea. I'm going to try that. So I put a needle minder, on the front, and then with the magnet on the back, and I stuck it on my magnetic board, and it messed everything up. So as much as I think they're really cute and would love to use them, I prefer the magnetic board, and then I just have my needles stuck to this. So as I'm, setting up to pick a different color or whatever, I drop my needles back down in here, so that's how I keep track of them without a needle minder. So this first one here is called a snag nabbit. So it's got like a burr end to it, and then the other end is a sharp tip. So how you use this, I love this tool. So when you're stitching and you look and you see that you have one stitch that's kind of maybe just sticking up in the corner, or as you come up through the fabric you bring a bit of the thread from the previous stitch with it. So that's where this comes in. So all I do, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to show you this. So if I have a stitch that looks like it might be sticking up a little bit or got a bit of a snag, you just poke the thread to catch the snag, and then just run this snag nabbit through it, and it pulls that little bit of thread back down inside. So this one I use more on the full coverage because you're doing all 4 holes of the eta square. So you get a lot more of the stitches kind of lift up when you're doing that one. I also have a petite needle. So it's just a little tiny 1-inch needle with a small eye. And when I use this one is if I have just 1 or 2 stitches left of that color and I really want to finish that little bit and not start with a new thread, I just use the petites, and that's where I told you I use my needle threader. So I'm going to order a different one I saw on YouTube from 123 Stitch. They have a different one. These ones do break. So you just stick the wire through it, and then you put your floss through that little wire and then pull your needle off, and it's threaded onto the eye. I also have my regular needles that I use, I believe are size 26, and I prefer the blunt ends. unless I'm working on a piece that has 1/4 or 3/4 stitches, and then I need a sharp end. I'm not sure if you can see that. So the reason why is because mostly I work on Aida, and with Aida it's hard to get a blunt needle directly into the square if you're doing a 1/4 stitch, or into the square and then across if you're doing a 3/4 stitch. So that's where I use a sharp needle. And other than that, I just have my regular blunt stuck on there, also the blunt end tapestry needles. So for deciding where you want to start, I do either starting at the bottom left or starting in the middle. I do both of them. It just depends on what the project is. So a really good way, I prefer myself, I like to have a 3x3 3-inch border all the way around the product. So if I'm picking my own fabric, I'll calculate out and have a 3-inch border. You can do whichever you want, but this is a little trick for finding where to start if you're going to start at the bottom or the top of the page. So I have a 1x1 square. If you were going to do 1-inch border, so you would just lay this down on your fabric and start right at that top corner, and that's 1 inch from the bottom and 1 inch from the side. Same thing if you were doing a 2-inch border, same idea, 2x2 inches, and then you would start right there. And my preference, like I said, is the 3x3. So put the 3x3, and then you would start right there. The fabric that comes in the kits, though, is often a 2-inch border. It's usually 2 inches bigger then, but for myself working on Q-snaps, I prefer the 3-inch. It gives me a little bit of extra fabric. Sorry, I have notes. I also have specialty needles. I just keep them separate. So I use only one needle for metallics, and I don't use that metallic needle for anything else except for working with metallic thread. So I just stuck it on a little piece of paper, metallic. I also have a beading needle, which is narrower, finer than the regular cross-stitching needles. That's another beading needle. And then I have what's called a couching needle. The Fall Fairy that I'm working on has some couching stitches, and when I get to those, I'll probably demonstrate how to do the couching stitch with that special couching needle. I do not lick my floss, sorry. I don't like that. I think that's kind of yucky. What I do instead of licking, or I don't want to always use a needle threader because they break so easy. Let's see if I can show you this. What I do is I take the floss and I wind it over top of the needle, and then I pull it down really hard and I pinch it with my nail and hold it really tight, and then just shove it through the eye of the needle like that. Normally it works, but I just think that mouths are not that clean, and if you're licking your floss, I just think you'd be getting bacteria onto your floss, and I don't want that on my pictures. So never been a floss licker. Don't do that. When you're stitching, the threads can get twisted. So what I do, if I get it after I stitch so many stitches, I can either just kind of bend my needle back around that way, or easier is I just take it like that and let it drop down, and the needle just sort of untwists itself. Whenever, or what you can do too is take it off of the needle and separate the two individual strands, and then kind of put them back together so that they're not twisted. And you'll notice it if the thread is getting twisted in your stitches, because your stitches will be kind of twisted. So the other thing I have is a stitching caddy. I keep this on my coffee table, or I bring this with me if I'm going upstairs to do some stitching. I found the mermaid. She was underneath my stitch caddy. So this is going to be my new start for December 1st. Oh my goodness. So this is Siren and the Shipwreck by Mirabilia. This is a Nora Corbett, and this is actually the first Mirabilia that I'm going to be doing, and certainly my first Nora Corbett. But there will be more of these. I want to do a mermaid, couple of mermaid designs for my bathroom that's off of the master bedroom. So she's going to be lovely when she's stitched up. I'm really excited to start her. So the Stitch Caddy, going back to the Stitch Caddy, this has my supplies in it, plus some extras. So I'll just kind of pull things out and then tell you how I use the different things. So this one here just has my highlighters in it. And I usually keep highlighters on my board, plus I keep some extras in here. I do have some extra needles just because they have the numbers on them, and I haven't put them in with my other ones yet. These little things I use as laying tools. This is actually a paintbrush, and this is actually the best one because it's got a round. So when I would use these, more often if I'm stitching with a white or a very light cream or ivory color, they don't, you can see more that the stitches aren't laying, you know, 2 stitches parallel like that. So I will hold the needle. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I let bring this up through the loop, and I kind of roll it like that to get the stitches to lay down flat beside each other. I just have a couple of different ones. This is a hair stick, and this one is a chopstick that I use all of those as laying tools. I do keep a little supply of my extra little super strong magnets, and I want to show you this because it's hilarious. I found this in my cat's toy box. Can you see that? And now he wants it. This was a cat toy, and they actually took the face of it off, which I took a picture of it and texted my son and said it's very Hannibal Lecter of the cat to do that. Isn't that weird? Anyway, I dropped it in there because I think it's funny. I have an extra thread magic. I have a lint roller. So when I'm sitting down to stitch, Lucy, my cat, often he wants to sit right beside me, so I did put a plastic bin beside me, so I kind of make him sit in the bin so his hair doesn't get on my clothes as much. But I do get some hair on my pant leg or whatever, so I'll lint roll myself, and if I get hair or lint or anything on my grind guard or even on the front of my fabric, I'll just run a lint roller through it just to kind of pick up all that hair. I also have a different kind of lint roller. Set this down. So this one I don't like to actually use for removing hair. These are the washable ones, the reusable ones. So you would use this, lint roll your clothes or whatever, and then you run it under water and it just rinses clean. What I use this for is for beading. So this is the bigger one. I did get a little set. I think I got 4 small ones and then this big one from Amazon. And I'm going to show you. So this is the beads, just stick. The reason I ordered the 5-pack is so that I could, when I'm beading, put different beads on this one. So what I did is I just opened up the bead pack and I just tapped that inside it and picked up the beads. And then from here, they're stuck on there well, and then you can just pick them up with your needle right off of the sticky little thing. So this is what I use for containing my beads and not having to always open the package or just dropping them on the floor. I also use invisible thread like this for attaching the beads. I also have nail glue so that if I'm needing to glue a magnet onto something, like for example, gluing a magnet onto the bottom of my thread magic, I use nail glue because it's really strong. I have a little thimble, which I rarely use, but it's in there. I have earplugs in case my neighbors are playing really loud music. I have my little separate bottle of the different specialty needles. A tape measure comes in handy. I have extra needles. I'm a bit of a needle hoarder, I found out. And I have extra needle threaders in there also. I also have some Scotch tape. So where a lint roller isn't effective enough for me, if I've had to rip out some stitches, especially if it's a dark color like black or dark blue, and then I take stitches out, it sometimes leaves just a little trace of them on the fabric. So I just take a little piece of Scotch tape and I just pick up the little bits of fluff that are left over after ripping out stitches. So that's why I keep Scotch tape there. I also have Band-Aids in case I poke my finger. Some extra needle threaders. I have a little magnifier with a light on it. I don't know if you can see that. Just if I had to look really close detail at something. I have a pair of scissors that I use for opening up packages or, you know, beads or just cutting paper and things like that. I don't use my embroidery scissors for that. I have a pen and a pencil, some lip balm, and I always have an extra pair of embroidery scissors and tweezers, just in case I drop them or they go missing and I can't find them right away. So, and then I have a little card on how to do French knots. I need to practice at doing those. And this one from Candamar Design shows how to do the couching stitch. So that's why I kept this little instruction thing in here. So that's my, oh, I have one more thing. I also have a magnifier. So I told you I was using my magnifier on the angel piece that's on linen. So I got this from 123 Stitch. It's called a Mag Eyes. And it actually came with another magnifier. I just put in the first one and I find it's adequate. So, and you can slide these out to clean them too. So that's, or to change them to clean it that way. So this is a visor that you put on your head. I don't want to do it and look like a dork. I put it on my head like this, and then I put it down so I can see better on the linens when I'm working on those. I do have makeup, or I have oily skin too, so what I do is I fold up a Kleenex and I put a piece of Kleenex against my forehead like that, and then I put my magnifier on. I would never use these out in public, and if I do wear them, I look like a total dork, so you'll probably never see me wearing my magnifier. The lint rollers we did talk about. I believe that's it. Those are some of my tips and tricks for cross stitching. I hope you enjoyed that. Maybe you learned something, find some interesting ways or different ways of doing some things. So let me know if you have anything particular that you like to do that helps you with your cross stitching. Please leave comments below. Let me know where you live in the country or world or states or provinces or wherever you're living, so I can put a pin for you in my world map. And once I get to 100 subscribers, I'm going to be doing a giveaway. So, and next week will be another update and possibly a fully finished objects with all of my framed pieces that I've done. I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Bye.